You make the mountains move. And I just pray that you will open my eyes to what you are doing here in Horizon, in our hearts, in our towns, in our world, everything that is going on that just seems so overwhelming in the world and even in our personal lives. The challenges we face every day. Help us to look back and see the times that you were faithful so we know that we can trust you in the future, that you will be faithful again and again and again. We give you our hearts, we give you our trust, we give you our doubt. Because I have to reach for my doubt constantly. Help us have eyes for you and what you are doing.
All right, good morning. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to Horizon. My name's DiSalvatore, and it's always a privilege to preach here at Horizon. Thanks, Pastor Alex, for the opportunity. And we're doing a series called Wonder. And the title of today's message is, What's So Wonderful About Wonder? And I gotta be honest, when Alex was talking to me about this series about wonder, I was like, really? You're gonna do something about wonder? You're gonna get all like touchy-feely and into our emotions and our, I don't want to feel. I'm like stressed and and just like overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't want to like look at the stars and dream. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes life feels more like a nightmare than a dream, And I feel like sometimes in moments of stress, we have a hard time seeing God in creation. We have a hard time seeing inspiration in movies, in art, in songs, in the things that we love, the things that charge our batteries. Simon Sinek says this: when we work hard for something we don't believe in, it's called stress. When we work hard for something we do believe in, it's called passion. And I think sometimes our lives are in that tension of like stress and passion. You could be working at a job that you love, but sometimes you can get a new boss, right? And that job that you love, all of a sudden, because of one person becomes like, oh, I gotta go to work. I gotta see them. Right? When someone really stresses you out, when you can't say their name, right? It's like, oh, they're here. It's not even Bob. It's them. And we live in that stress, and I feel like in those moments of stress, it's hard to find the value in what we do. It's hard to find the value in who others are. And even if that person, Bob, I don't know Bob, but just say that Bob, we don't even know what's going on in Bob's life that's causing him to be like that. And so we just get stressed, we feel overwhelmed, and actually 20% of people in America actually love their job. 20%. So there's a lot of stressed out people out there. And I feel like even now, what's going on in our country, what's going on overseas, there's just more and more stress. And when we feel overwhelmed, we lose the wonder. That song that you hear that comes on in the car and you can't get out of your car, you have to like wait till the song ends. It's like, oh, it's just another song. That movie that you love, like I love movies, and movies is a way for me to kind of like recharge my batteries. Like, oh, I don't want to feel like watching this. And my boys are like, dude, let's watch Captain America. I'm like, yes, I know Captain America Saves the World is awesome. Yeah. We go through those things that we love, just don't do it for us anymore. And we just kind of go through the grind and we lose the wonder. And that job that we love becomes just a job. And that marriage that we're in is no longer just about loving that person, it's just a marriage. Just is a funny word, right? When a couple years ago, when you would cough, it was just a cough. But now if you cough, it's like, you have COVID? Is that COVID? I remember when I was like getting a haircut, it was like right before like COVID really hit and like you started wearing masks. and I was getting my haircut at the barber seat, and I'm like coughing, right? And I'm like trying so hard not to cough. I'm like looking around, like, oh, it's just allergies, guys, you know. And I feel like the looks, he's got COVID. What is he doing here, you know? It was like, just cough, just a cough. You know, it makes me think of, I love British humor, so I don't know if you guys know about Mighty Python, but there's this scene where, like, the knight gets his arm cut off, and he's like, oh, it's just a flesh wound. Like, no, it's not just a flesh wound, you know? And, you know, we look at our lives, and that word just is a powerful thing. You're not just a nurse, especially to someone who needs care. You're not just a grandfather, especially to someone who's never been a father. You don't just work at Comcast, especially for a grandmother who's 95 years old, who is in her bedroom, and the cable goes out, and she is stressed out. Let's talk about my grandma Emma. All right, we recently had our cable go out. Let me tell you something. She loves days of our lives. You know, those days of our lives are very long. That cable goes out, so she loves Comcast, especially when they come and fix it. But it's not just. You're not just an employee. You're something so much more. And I just want to, and for me, you know, talking about songs, I love music. And growing up, I had a hard time finding confidence in who I was. I had an older brother who was good looking, had really good hair, and I always compared myself to him. I struggled with speaking, actually stuttered growing up. So it's ironic that I would be a teacher now and preach when I stuttered so much growing up. And I really just had a hard time believing in myself and having confidence. And one of the things that brought me so much confidence and so much identity was drums. My cousin Chris got a guitar, his uncle's guitar, and we started jamming out in our basement to 90s grunge and, you know, Nirvana and all that good fun stuff, you know. And playing the drums brought a lot of confidence. I started playing in church. And playing drums in church gave me such a sense of, like, passion, gave me such a connection to God. I used to hate singing songs. Now I love playing songs because I found that passion. They weren't just drums, it was so much more. I actually wrote a paper for my college entrance exam about being a drummer and how that changed my life. They weren't just drums. And I think we need to look at ourselves. There's so much more to who you are. There's so much more to what we see around in this world. You know, and I heard a statistic about when you're feeling disconnected, one of the best things that you can do is take a walk. It's amazing how just getting out of our routine and getting into God's creation, getting into nature, can just recharge our batteries. There's something about being in God's creation. There's something about being in the midst of the world that He created, because it's not just the world, it's God's creation. You're not just a person, you are God's creation. And I love Genesis 15, where God is talking to Abram, and He's telling him that He's going to be a father of nations, but he can't have kids. And this is God talking to Abraham, not at 25, but at 75. So Abraham's got a little bit of doubt. And then God led Abraham outside, and He said, look at the sky. There's so many stars, you can't count them. Your descendants also will be too many to count. Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord accepted Abram's faith. And that faith made him right with God. You know, I love this because Abraham traveled a lot. God called him to a land he did not know. So they traveled often. And can you imagine every time Abraham would walk outside and he'd see the stars? It would be another reminder of God's promise. Every time he's like every time he looks at himself, he doubts. But every time he looks at the stars, he believes. And I love how God gives us those little reminders. He said, hey, I still believe in you. Hey, it's not over. Hey, one more round. Isn't it amazing how sometimes when you're kind of like at your wit's end, you get that text message? You know, just when you need it most, it's like, oh, man, I really need that text message. Or you read that verse and you just flip open your Bible and say, oh, man, I really need to hear that. Or just whatever it is, God knows how to get to you, right? God knows the things that just kind of trigger you in a good way. And the stars were God's way of reminding Abraham, hey, don't give up. And you know, it's interesting because God always speaks to us through many different things. You know, when we look at creation, there's the tree. Look at the stars. Abraham's son, Jacob, had a dream. And the cross. These are all different reminders that we have. You know, when we think about even the cross, it's so interesting when we think about the cross. Because something that was meant to bring death brings life. Even Jacob's dream was a reminder of God's presence. The stars were a reminder of God's promise. Even the tree of good and evil was a reminder that God gives us a choice. I love that God gives us a choice. He doesn't force us to believe. He doesn't force us to be a certain way. He gives us a choice. That's what real love is all about. And his son also had this sense of being more aware to what was going on than just what he saw in the natural. Abraham's son, Jacob, woke up from his sleep. And he said, God is in this place. Truly, I didn't even know it. He was terrified. He whispered in awe, incredible, wonderful, holy. This is God's house. This is the gate of heaven. I love it. God's here, and I didn't even realize it. I think that's what happens when we get stressed. It's not that like all of a sudden God shows up, you know? God's always there. It's just whether or not we want to acknowledge him there or not, or we slow down to see him there, or we quiet the noise of the world to hear that he's there. You know, it's always funny when people say like, we got to go to this preacher, or we got to go to this service, or we got to go to this state, or this thing, or follow this move of God. Listen, God's always with you. And God's always where you are. It's just our eyes open to him being there. I love that. God is in this place, and I didn't even know it. What are the places that you go that God's there that sometimes you don't even realize it? You know, I think that's why it's not just your job. But when you go there, there's God's presence that goes there. You're having an influence, and you don't even realize it. May our eyes be open to what God is doing. That tree of good and evil was not just this tree to represent sin, but it was a choice. The promise that Abraham saw in the stars, they were a promise, a constant reminder. And this dream that Jacob had, that God is always there. And I love the cross. This icon, this symbol that was actually a murder weapon of the day. I mean, think about it. Jesus was a carpenter. So I'm sure in his youth, as he was working in his craft, he was building other crosses than his own. And so this thing that he would build would be this murder device that would be set up in public places so people can see and be shamed and be intimidated and say, hey, follow the rules because that could be you. This thing that meant death because of Jesus now means life. Like we carry this cross, people get tattoos of crosses, people get crosses on their necklaces. I love having a little cross necklace when I was younger enough, like this little Italian judo boy, got my little cross, you know. But it'd be like hanging like an electric chair today. It'd be like hanging a gun from your neck today. And it's amazing how Jesus can just turn a negative into a positive. And he can do the same thing in your life as well. You know, you may see yourself one way, but God sees you in a whole other light. He sees you so much more than what you see yourselves. And I think sometimes God has to change our mind, and sometimes we have to change our name. God changed Abram's name. His name, Abram, meant high father. Abraham means father of multitudes. High father, you think like prestige, wealth. Abraham had all those things. But now he's a father of multitudes. Sarai means princess. Sarah means mother of nations. To us, it's just an H. You know, just place an I and an H. But in Hebrew culture, a whole nother meaning. Princess means it's all about you, princess, right? Oh, princess, you know? Sarah, you're a mother of nations. You're an influencer. Jacob, supplanter, someone that likes to scheme, you know? Jacob's like from the beginning, you know, always was scheming, took his brother's birthright, you know? You're a schemer, you know, like that kid in school that gets labeled, you know, there's always that one kid in school that kind of gets labeled, that was Jacob. Oh, I'll be such a Jacob, you know, especially when like that name becomes something. That was Jacob. But then God changed his name to having power with God. Whoa. In one instance, always having to have the power, that was Jacob. I'm going to put things in my hands. I'm going to make it happen. I'm the one in control. And then Israel, I'm giving God control. Totally different mindset. And then even in the New Testament, Simon, one of Jesus' disciples, means God has heard. And it's ironic because Simon had a big mouth. He was always talking. Yes, Simon, we know. Yes, Simon, yes. Simon, dude, just shut up, man. Like, Jesus is talking, you know? He was that one disciple who just couldn't, like, hold it in. You know, he'd be the one, like, talking to him and be like, dude, yes, I know what's going to happen. Please, look, I don't know what's going to happen, you know? He was the guy that always talked. Yes, Simon, we know, we hear you, Simon. God even hears you, Simon. But then God changed his name to Peter, which means rock, stability. Someone who his whole life had no stability, no control, always letting his mouth get the best of him. And then Jesus comes along and says, oh man, you're a rock. You're different. I love this quote by Brene Brown. Let go of who you think you are supposed to be and embrace who you are. Because here's the thing. Everyone fails at who they're supposed to be. But when we stop trying to be perfect, I think it's when we can be good. And I think there's wisdom there. You know, maybe some of us here in this place have had an identity that we've been holding on to that isn't what God called us to. Maybe some of you here think you're a failure, that you messed up, that you can't outrun your past. And God says, I got a promise. I got a purpose. You know, maybe we need to like stop seeing the negative, unplug, and see the stars, and see what God is doing. That it's bigger than you. He's got a plan for you. Let go of who you think you are supposed to be. Let go of what you think your job is supposed to be. Let go of what you think your family is supposed to be. And embrace who God says you are. Going on, God speaks to Abraham, hey, you're going to have a child. 75. Over 20 years later, God speaks to Abraham again, Genesis 17, which is ironic. This is like 2 chapters later, but in like Abram's world, it was 25 years later. Now, when Abraham was 99 years old, not like, that's old. You thought you're old, you're not old. You're young. You are young love. The Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you. I will multiply you exceedingly. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. The ironic thing about this verse that I really find encouraging is that God says to Abraham, be blameless after he just screwed up and had a baby with Hagar, not his wife. Huge failure, him trying to make something happen in his own way. But God doesn't say, Abraham, why'd you mess up? Abraham, why'd you do that? He didn't say why. He said, look what you can do. Look what you can become. God sees you by your end result, not by your errors. That's why God said to Abraham, be blameless, walk before me. He saw what his future was going to be. Even Abraham couldn't see in that moment. God sees you by the end result. And it's good. It's worth it. It's wonderful. a Ford executive. And he was hired in 2006. And in 2006, Ford was not doing good. They were actually losing billions of dollars. Not millions, billions of dollars. You know, the little Dr. Evil one, you know, million, but like losing billions of dollars. And he would have these meetings with his high techs, and they'd have these PowerPoints, and they'd have these green slides, and they're good. And all the slides that they would present were green. And he'd be watching these presentations like, all right, you're saying everything's good, but we're losing billions of dollars. What is going on? Like, it can't be good if we're losing billions, right? Something's not working here. And then one of the execs had the courage to stand up and say, because before, when we would present what was going on, if you had a red slide, that person would get fired. And so because of one executive who focused on the person and saw the person as a problem, not that they had a problem, Alan Maloney said, you have a problem. You are not the problem. The executive before thought, if there was a problem, it must be you, so you gotta go. No! You're not the problem. You have a problem. That's such a big difference. And he said, no, let's work together to solve that problem. And Ford became the comeback company of the year. Failing millions because of one change of mindset. Instead of seeing yourself as a problem, and just seeing yourself as someone who has a problem. Some of you here today, some of you guys watching online, you think you are the problem. You are not the problem. I'll say that one more time. You are not the problem. You may have a problem, but you are not the problem. Maybe for too long, someone said something to you and it just stuck. And you think that's who you are. But you're not. Psalm 139 says this, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. You are wonderful. God doesn't make junk. And I think that's why it's so important for us to get out into the world, to get off our computer screens, to get off our social media, and just get into something like God's creation and see the beauty in God's creation and the wonder. Because if God can create that, look at the amazing things that God has done in your life and who you are. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are not an accident. You are not a screw up. You are not a problem. God sees wonder in you. 2 Corinthians 4:8 from the Message translation says this. If you only look at us, you might well miss the brightness. We carry this precious message around in unadorned clay pots of our ordinary lives. That's to prevent anyone from confusing God's incomparable power with us. As it is, there's not much a chance of that. You know yourselves that there's not much to look at. We've been surrounded and battered by troubles. But we're not demoralized. We're not sure what to do, but we know that God knows what to do. Let me read that again. We've been surrounded and battered by troubles, but we're not demoralized. We're not sure what to do, but we know that God knows what to do. We've been spiritually terrorized, but God hasn't left our side. Yo, if there's anyone here, watch online that's been hurt by a church, don't let a Christian make you lose your love, make you lose your faith in God. That was a Christian, that wasn't Christ. There's a big difference there. Alright? Sometimes the biggest hurts come from church. I don't know why that is, but I think maybe because you don't see it coming sometimes. Man, they're supposed to be loving. Why are they such a jerk? You know? Man, this church was supposed to be here for me. Why are they not? The biggest wounds, I think, come from churches. We've been thrown down, but we haven't been broken. While we're going through the worst, you're getting in on the best. Maybe not miss the brightness. You know, this verse speaks to me. This whole idea of like being spiritually terrorized, because I'm a teacher now, and for a number of years I was a pastor. And being pastor can be great sometimes, but being pastor really sucks sometimes. And you know, it's interesting. When I was in Bible college, and I was talking to the pastor, I was apprehensive about going into the ministry. And I was like, I'm afraid of getting hurt. He's like, by non-Christians, right? I'm like, no, I'm not afraid of getting hurt by Christians. Like, I'm cool with non-Christians, but like it's the Christians that worry me. And that's exactly what happened to me in ministry. Like, there'd be times when I would be slandered, lied about. Pastors that would get like really competitive, and there's times when we just got into really difficult situations, exploited. You know, I remember being hired by one pastor, and the Sunday morning he introduced us like, "We got this couple for a bargain." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm a bargain. All right." You know, no one wants to be a bargain. You know, that's not finding worthy. It's not finding wonder. Can't find wonder in a bargain. I mean, you find a deal. And you know, for a lot of time, for many years, I would just take all those hurts and just take them on, internalize them, and it got really hard to be in church. It got really hard to read the Bible. It got really hard just to like believe. And this past year, in 5th grade, I was reading The Outsiders with my class. And the story, if you don't know, it's a movie too, about the haves and the have-nots. There's this group called the socials, and they're like the elite, the social elite, the wealthy, and then there's the greasers who are kind of like, you know, the dregs of society, like the have-nots. And the whole book is about like perceptions and about being more than who you are. And there's this scene where the greasers, the have-nots, save these kids from this burning church, and it becomes a big deal, becomes newsworthy. And one of the kids that saved him, spoiler alert, his name is Johnny, and he loves sunsets. And he found gold in sunsets. He's always telling like, stay gold, find the good in this world. There's good in this world. Even though people say we're bad, we're a greaser, there's good in this world. And he was telling his friend that like, even though he went to save those kids, and he got badly hurt, actually cost him his life. And he wrote this poem, he wrote this note to his friend. He's like, stay gold. It was worth it to save those kids. And when I was reading that with my class, it really hit me, because sometimes the things that we go through life can be really, really hard. And you feel like, why did I go through that? Was it worth it? And like reading that with my class, I was just like, you know what? Even though there was a lot of crappy things that we went through in ministry, and there's a lot of negative things, there's a lot of positive things too. There was a lot of families that we had an impact on. There's a lot of families that had an impact on us. There was a lot of good that took place. And I'm actually got a tattoo that says stay gold, as a reminder to myself that even when the world looks like it's negative, there's so much more. There's so much more to be found. And a number of years ago, when we were out of youth ministry, I got an email from one of my students. And this youth, her name, she had a troubled life. Her dad actually owned a strip club, and a neighborhood friend from the church would take her to church, and she would be the student that when we go to a retreat, we go to like hear the speaker and we go to these spiritual youth retreats. She'd be the one like leading the services because it was like too much for her. You know, she'd be the one, and people in the church actually talked about her, which is messed up. I think adults talking about a young person, like just to give you an idea of what was going on with this girl's life. And so many years later, when we were out of youth ministry, we left that church. Never knew, never raised her hand. during a message, never had one of those like come to Jesus moments. You know what I'm talking about? You know, it always you just on the surface you never knew that God was doing something. Years later, you got to see it out. I want to read it to you. Hey, Pastor, how are you, Merciful? I'll change your name. Hey, this is Anne from Pincho. Well, not anymore. I haven't had much time lately, but I'm taking the time to catch up with you guys. So how have you been? I've been busy attending HACC work, Harrisburg Community College, taking 16 credits, anxiously waiting for the acceptance letter from the side of college. Cross your fingers. I'm currently majoring in FCF, which is Family and Consumer Science and Education. I'd like to be a teacher. If you don't know what an FCF teacher is, it's a home ec plus some more. Child development, human relations, nutrition, cooking, housing, and so much more. My first semester here, if you lost track of time, I graduated. It was awesome. But I had a lot of work. I did 6 to 7 hours of homework each night, Monday through Thursday. It was crazy. And it ended up with a 4.0. This semester is not going to be so time consuming, but I had a statistics class. And the teacher is horrible. I'm going to end with a B, maybe. It has been so long since I talked to you guys. Totally different than when you knew me last. I turned my life around. I was saved back in June, and I've been headed down the right path ever since. It was all thanks to Paul and his dedication to me, working with him, repainting the fire escape in 100-degree weather. And we went outside to the empty apartment, and we were working outside, and the rest is history. That day on, I was changed. Finding God while working on an apartment. Presence. Right? Here's God. You didn't realize it all along. I like to catch up with you guys. Yeah, I go to their house the weekend and live with them throughout the summer. Oh, by the way, I'm taking a Spanish class. And currently I have an A. Thanks, Marissa. Well, hey, I look forward to your reply. I hope you guys are doing well. You know, it's interesting, when she wrote me this email, she was going to school to be a teacher. And now, she is a teacher. It's amazing. You just never know. You never know what God's doing behind the scenes. Maybe we find wonder in this beautiful, messy world that we find ourselves in. And if Mercy can come, the team can come. Now, I'm going to include you guys one last quote. You know, read these verses, hear these stories. Alright, it's supposed to be this bright, like, find the brightness in God and be a person of light and find wonder in this world of worry and all these kinds of things. And I love this last quote by Anne Lamont. She says, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. You know, it's interesting, like trying to work with, you know, the cable company to get the cable working at my parents' house. The first thing they said is, well, did you unplug your router? You unplug it? It's like the first thing they always ask. You might need to unplug it and plug it back in again. Maybe some of us can unplug. You've been going. And maybe we just need to unplug, turn off the phone, turn off the screen, take a day off. Yes, you can afford to do it. Take a day off, alright? Maybe even, alright, if you can't afford it, maybe just go a little bit later, alright?
Even in the service, I felt the wonder of the love of God chasing after you and pursuing you. If you're a first-time visitor here in person or watching online, please let us know. We donate $25 to Compassion International in your honor. You can find out more about them on their website at compassion.com. If you'd like to give to support the work that Horizon is doing in our community, you can do so online at relationshipsnotreligion.com, where there's also a bucket like that or we have Venmo and PayPal. Our community dinner this week is Wednesday again at 6 p.m. in Alex and I's house. Come out, hang out, and it's just a fun time. Chill and food. Best things in the world, right? Spiritual formation groups. For the past 12 weeks, we've been learning how to implement the spiritual practices of Jesus. For the next few weeks, we'll be reviewing these practices on our social media pages. And I know that it has helped me further understand who I am in Jesus and just what it takes to continue to live and love like Him and grow in the knowledge of Him. Our core value for the week is Jesus-centered. Everything that we do centers around Jesus. We believe the world would be a better place if people became students of the way that Jesus lived and loved. I pray that your week is filled with wonder and that we may have the eyes to see it. You are dismissed.